I'm Robin Smith, and happy to be here to discuss trauma, connection, and relationships with you. And I'm a little tired just getting off a trauma training. I've been in training all day and seeing clients, and so just putting that in the mix. But here's what I want to share. We're talking about how trauma affects your ability to connect with yourself and others, and therefore it will affect how you relate to yourself and others. I want to share a quote from Gabor Mate, and some of you remember last week, if you saw the video, I was sharing about the recent movie that came out featuring him, and he's a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, and speaks a lot about trauma. You can find him all over YouTube, and he's written several wonderful books connecting trauma to addiction and trauma to chronic disease. And this one quote that I like very much, it says, I'm going to put that in my center here. It says, people have two needs, attachment and authenticity. When authenticity threatens attachment, attachment trumps authenticity. I want to say it again. When authenticity threatens attachment, attachment trumps authenticity. So the gist is, we all require a deep connection with a caring and loving other. And as I was sharing a little bit last week, when we don't have that in a time of trauma, it's when we get affected by the trauma. So that an incident isn't inherently traumatic, it's how we respond to it in our nervous system, in our being. And part of what makes it traumatic is when we don't have that authentic, that caring, that connecting other being. And that's attachment is so key for that. So when we're born, we need actually when we're gestating in the womb, when we're a fetus and in the womb, we need attachment. Even in that situation, we need the mother, the woman bearing the child, right, to be connecting with the child. And the child is actually affected by your mother's ability to connect with you. The child can feel when it's not wanted. It can feel when the mother is sensitive to the child and when she's disconnected. They do lots of tests now. Without poking the baby, they can tell how it's responding to certain situations, to arguments, to mother being depressed or anxious. All that affects the infant. So it makes a big impact on the growing infant's nervous system when the mother has her own traumatic experiences, and also when she is disconnected from the infant, from the fetus. And so that need for attachment continues consistently through birth, through child rearing, infancy, childhood, and beyond. We all need attachment, and as an adult, we attach to those that we're closest to. But the infant needs that attachment right away. That attachment is when the baby clings to the breast and starts, nestling in and breastfeeding, and the attachment needs to continue, and the infant needs to feel the mother connecting to it. That's what we call attunement. The mother is sensitive to the baby's needs, caring, tuned in, responsive. And when the mother's not responsive, or the father, or any other caregiver that might be on the scene, but when the primary caregivers are not responsive, that affects the baby's ability to attach. So Gabor Mate in this quote is pointing to how necessary attachment is. And what happens is when there's trauma in the environment, when there's trauma could be from not getting your needs met, not getting attunement, not getting attachment. It can also be from other forms of neglect, not getting the food you need, not getting the shelter you need, or your parents arguing or fighting, or being anxious or being ill, or not giving you enough attention because one of your siblings needs more attention. Anyway, you've heard me give lots of examples if you've been in this group, so I won't go on. There's so many ways we can experience trauma, but the point being that if we have a sense that in order to attach, in order to get that attention that we need and that affection is essential for health, for a healthy nervous system. and healthy emotional system, if we don't get what we need by being our authentic selves, then we learn to cut off our authenticity because, as you heard in the quote, attachment trumps authenticity. So we're talking about how your attachment, a baby's attachment, and a child's ability to attach is more essential than than showing up authentically. One sec. I have to sneeze. Ah. There. My nose got really itchy. So that's me being authentic. All right, I've got the image of me sneezing, so I'm getting that out of my face. So what does not being authentic look like? How do you shift that? If your authenticity is threatening your attachment, what do? So you might, if you being authentic looks like, sneezing on camera, or if it looks like showing that you're angry, or if it looks like showing that you're sad, or showing that you're scared. And if you discover that your authentic expression is threatening to attachment because your caregivers or parents are letting you know you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't show that emotion, or if you do that, you're going to get punished, or I'm going to withdraw my love from you if you show up as weak, or if you don't get the A grade, or if you're not a star student or a star player, if you don't get the award, you're going to get, ostracized. Then the child will learn to withhold their authentic expression in order to maintain the attachment, right? Because that is more important to survival than authenticity. So it becomes a survival strategy to withhold your authenticity in whatever way you discover works based on your situation at home. Or maybe you're not at home, you're in foster care or wherever you are. So let me know if that's making sense and if you have any questions. And of course, even if you're watching the replay, totally fine to thank you for saying hi, Kathy, and for the blessings. Yeah, so let me know if you have any questions and if that's making sense. So the key now for those of us who are here and we're adults is to start to assess, how am I being inauthentic now? Because that now affects your ability to have healthy relationships. The problem that we all have is that our survival strategies are brilliant. And so that's not a problem. That's a good thing. We create our own survival strategies. Maybe we learn them from others, but often we figure them out on our own based on our unique situations to get us through the difficult time that we have in childhood or whenever it happened. But generally, we're talking about childhood now, because that's like the deepest patterns, right? That are created early in life. And so the problem with our survival strategies is that we don't often know how to release them when we no longer need them. So if we're no longer being told it's not okay to be yourself, and we're trying to have a relationship, and we keep withholding our authentic expression, then we're going to find that we're not having really deep connections with people, because we're not showing up fully. We're not showing up naturally as who we are. And so we have an old pattern, an old story that we're playing, and belief and way and personality becomes part of our personality to show up a certain way in order to get the attachment, in order to get the connection. So we may think, I have to be pretty in order to be liked, or we may think I have to be perfect in order to be liked and to be approved of. Or we may think I have to be smart, or I have to be nice. So these are some key ones. Or I have to be strong and not weak. So these are some really popular choices and popular beliefs that we may take on because we needed them for our survival early on. But if we keep that going, then we end up working kind of hard to show others who we think we're supposed to be in order to get approved of and liked and loved. And the problem with that is it's hard work. It's not sustainable. It's exhausting over time. And we end up feeling depleted, and we end up feeling resentful that we're, trying to do all these calisthenics to get liked and approved of, when it's not our natural way of being. So just taking that in for a moment, and I'm going to pop in back to the group and see what you have to say. Withholding authenticity is such a real thing. I've never thought about this before, but it is entirely true. Oh, I'm glad that resonates for you, Yvette. Thanks for chiming in. Yeah, it is. It's super common, and yeah, we don't often realize we're doing it because it's become our way of life. So I used to have this thing, and in the work I do, I teach about what we call personas or parts, where we learn about different kind of roles that we play to get a certain kind of attention. So you might play the successful, businesswoman who has her act together and is really on it and smart and capable. But sometimes, not everyone can be that way all the time, right? And so you might try so hard all the time and push, and then you end up depleting yourself, exhausting your adrenals. You may also have this perfectionistic thing going, and those two can be connected, where same kind of thing, you push, and you have to do everything perfectly, and there's all this effort involved in everything that you do. And again, you're depleted because of it. And you tell yourself that you won't get, what you need from people unless you show up in a certain way. I think I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I just wanted to give some more examples. Yes, so we don't always see that we're doing that until it starts really getting in the way of connection. So you may end up having arguments with your spouse or some loved one over, this kind of persona that you're showing up as. Maybe you're the pleaser who's always trying to help people and always trying to be nice and always going out of your way to extend a helping hand. But again, if you do that more than is comfortable for yourself, you're overextending and again kind of depleting, and it's not sustainable. And the problem with that, we've talked about codependency here before, is that you don't get your own needs met when you're always showing up for others. So can you see how that's another way of not being totally authentic? If you only show up as the one who can help, but not the one who needs help, because everyone needs help. Everyone has needs. We're not always perfect. We're not always strong. We're not always having our act together. We're not always the one who can give. It has to be the yin and the yang to have a balanced life. We are all, I like the expression, like the full spectrum of the rainbow. We have all the colors, all the flavors inside of us. It's not a black and white thing, or that we should be all white and pure and good, because we all have every color right inside. We all have the full spectrum of emotions. We all have anger and sadness and fear, as well as joy and, all the feel good emotions. So as soon as we can start embracing the whole spectrum of ourselves and letting that be okay, that we're human and that we have a full range of expression and experience and desires and fears and all of that, and not try to be so, one way or another, then the more we're going to be able to relax into our authentic selves. And when we can do that, we're going to draw those people in who want that, who can love us for who we actually are instead of who we're trying to be. Does that make sense? So who wants to be loved for something that they're trying to be? Because that's not really you, right? So then you're not having an authentic connection. You're having this false connection. If I put this beautiful mask on and I pretend, look, I'm always smiling, then I feel like I have to always be smiling in order to get the love, right? Or if I show up as like, I'm so nice, then I feel like if I'm not nice, I lose the connection, right? I lose the attachment. So that's what I'm pointing to. We make up these stories based on often traumatic experiences that teach us that we have to show up a certain way in order to get the attachment or the connection. And then we keep it going into adulthood and wondering why we end up recycling the same kind of relationship patterns. Let me know if that's making sense, or if you have any comments or questions. I'd love to know. And I am going to keep this one a little shorter today. I'm going to read to you a quote that I took down out of the movie, The Wisdom of Trauma, from Gabor Mate. And again, his work is wonderful if you feel inspired to check out his books. He says, trauma fundamentally means a disconnection from self. A disconnection from self. Why do we get disconnected? Because it's too painful to be ourselves. Then, this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? In different words. Then that becomes a lifelong dynamic. I no longer know how to deal with emotions. It means that in relationships, when I feel a bit hurt, I immediately withdraw, so I don't have to feel those emotions that I don't know what to do with. So there's a disconnect. It also means that when I have gut feelings, I don't follow them. So I create situations of risk for myself. So all this is pointing to how we disconnect from ourselves, from our authentic selves, in order to maintain attachment to a caregiver, even if that caregiver is abusive. It's shocking to hear that, but it's true, because when you're a child, you rely 100% on your caregivers, right? You can't pay the bills, you can't go to the store, you can't put a roof over your head, so you're completely dependent. And so you do what you have to do to maintain that that care from the caregiver. Food, shelter, even if it doesn't feel like love, at least you're surviving. So you might have to shut down your emotions in order for that to happen, and your desires. I'm going to continue with the quote. Trauma also affects how our brains develop. Certain key brain circuits that have to do with how we react and respond and regulate ourselves, how we handle stress, how we interact to other people, how much empathy and insight we have, how much compassion we have. These functions of the midfrontal cortex are limited and constricted by trauma. So taking that in, trauma affects how our brains develop. Now, that's true. It affects the circuits and how things connect and are wired. And that being said, we can still do a whole lot of healing as adults. So if you had really difficult things happen, even if it was nobody's fault, like an accident or something happened in birth, you can still do a lot of repair. And that's what's, I want to leave you with, is hope. And also hopefully some encouragement to take the next step if you're not getting support and you're stuck in old patterns that aren't serving you, and you're frustrated in your relationships and you feel bad about yourself, or stuck in certain ways in your work life or in your emotional life. Then you probably have suffered some difficult life circumstances earlier, even if you don't remember them. And you could benefit from getting some support from a compassionate other who can really carry you through. So someone who's trauma trained, who can carry you through and help you start to rewire and feel good again. It's totally possible. And that's why I do the work that I do, because I believe in that. I've done a lot of training in trauma, and I'm continuing with a bunch more training right now. So last line of quote here, 2 sentences here from Gabor Mate. He says, children don't get traumatized because they get hurt. They get traumatized because they are alone with their hurt. That's so sad. So again, pointing to how important it is that we have someone to attach to, someone who's caring and empathic. I spoke to that last week. That helps us through the difficult time. Sometimes it was, yesterday I asked in the group, who was your favorite teacher? Sometimes we had a favorite school teacher, elementary school teacher, who held our hand, who really saw our struggles. And so that was the person. It wasn't our caregivers, but it's someone like that later in life, or someone older who, like a grandparent or an aunt or a babysitter, who really, really held you in empathy and love. And so that was your lifeline. And so it's so healing to recognize that and to remember that someone helped you get through, or something. Maybe it was a pet, maybe it was nature. So maybe you had another way of supporting yourself through the difficult time, and it's really important to acknowledge those, and those are called resources. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you for being here, either now or later. I hope you let me know that you got something out of this. And if you have questions or comments, I'd love to know. If you're interested in working with me, I do have like 1 or 2 spots for clients right now. So I will put a link in the chat here as I finish. I'll just get that out now. And put that in for you. And it's right here. So I'll put that in, and then I'll open up some times on my calendar where you can schedule a free breakthrough session with me, where we can look together at what's going on. And it's totally free, and it's an opportunity for me to see how I can support you. And I love to offer some takeaways in that session. And also we can look at if it's a good fit to work together. So check that out, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next week. Is next week July 1st already? It is. It's July 1st next week if you're watching me live or shortly after this recording. So I hope to see you then. Same time, same place. Mwah, much love. Take care.